The night sky was alive with fire. The forest groaned under the weight of war, trees collapsing in flames while shadows danced among the chaos. Raverin, the Alpha King, rode at the head of his army, his black armor glinting in the firelight. His eyes, cold as steel, scanned the land he had come to conquer. His army's mission was clear: destroy the wolf-shifter pack that had defied him for too long. The pack had been proud, fierce, and clever. But tonight, their defiance would meet the full force of Raverin's vengeance. The screams of the wolves and the crackle of fire filled the air as his soldiers advanced, weapons raised. The battle was swift and merciless. Trees fell, the ground shook, and in the blink of an eye the pack's home was reduced to ashes. Amid the devastation, a single figure moved with silent grace. Lyra, a young woman of the fallen pack, had survived. Her chest burned with grief, her hands scorched, yet her eyes shone with defiance. She moved among the ruins, searching for any remaining pack members, but the forest whispered only death and silence. She had lost everything: her family, her home, her people. Lyra crouched by a fallen tree, listening. The sound of armored footsteps approached. She stiffened, gripping the haft of her spear. It was him, the Alpha King himself, Raverin. He was surveying the destruction, his presence heavy and commanding. Lyra's heart hammered in her chest. Hatred surged through her veins, yet she knew the danger of confronting him. As Raverin rode closer, a hidden trap beneath the forest floor, set by Lyra's pack, triggered. A net of sharp vines shot upward, catching him and nearly dragging him from his horse. The Alpha King roared in fury and pain, his armor scraping against the steel-tipped ropes. He struggled, but the trap held him fast. Lyra's hand tightened around her spear. She could finish him here, take revenge for all he had destroyed. Every instinct screamed at her to strike. Yet something in the king's eyes, pain, surprise, vulnerability, made her hesitate. Her mind spun. He had killed her family, yes, but right now, he was human, weak, and he could die. For a moment, time froze. The fire's glow reflected in Raverin's eyes as he struggled. Lyra took a deep breath. Then, against all reason, she stepped forward. Carefully, she untangled the net, freeing him. He fell to the ground with a heavy thud, his dark cloak dusted with ash and blood. "Why?" he rasped, voice low and harsh. "Why would you save me?" Lyra did not answer. She only pressed a finger to her lips, then disappeared into the shadows, leaving him with the question, and a memory that would haunt him. Raverin pulled himself to his feet, rage and confusion mixing inside him. He had conquered the pack, destroyed their home, and yet this girl, this single survivor, had spared his life. Something in her act of mercy unsettled him. He had always believed that fear and power were enough to command respect, but now, a new feeling stirred, something he did not understand. Meanwhile, Lyra fled deeper into the forest, her heart heavy. The night smelled of smoke and sorrow. She had saved the man who killed her family. Her hands shook, and a part of her wanted to run forever. Yet another part could not ignore the strange pull she felt toward him. She despised it, but it was there, lingering like a shadow she could not shake. Hours passed, and the forest grew quiet. Raverin stood on a ridge overlooking the smoldering remains of the pack's home. He clenched his fists, the weight of what had happened pressing down on him. For the first time in his life, the Alpha King was unsure of his own heart. How could a single girl, leave such an impression on a man like him, one who had only known fear, control, and conquest? The next morning brought only more silence. Lyra crouched in the ruins of a small clearing, tending to a cut on her arm. She pressed her hand against it, feeling the blood warm beneath her palm. Her pack was gone. Her family was gone. Everything she had known was gone. But she was alive, and she had survived. Her survival, however, came with a burden. She had saved the Alpha King, the destroyer of her world. That act, meant to preserve life, felt like a betrayal to her people. She could not stop thinking about his eyes in the firelight, about the raw vulnerability he had shown. It disturbed her. She hated it, and yet she could not deny it. Meanwhile, Raverin gathered his generals. The men were eager to finish the hunt, to ensure that no survivors remained to rise against the throne. But he dismissed them with a wave of his hand. His mind was not on victory or spoils. It was on her, the girl who had saved his life. He did not know her name, but he could not forget her. For the first time, Raverin felt something he had never allowed himself to feel: uncertainty. He questioned his instincts, his strategies, even his own morality. How could a single act of mercy from a girl he had never met unsettle a king, and why did he feel compelled to find her? Lyra, unaware that she was being tracked, made her way to a hidden cave deep in the forest. She sank to the ground, exhaustion pulling at her body. Her mind replayed the events of the night, the screams, the fire, the smell of ash. And then the king, his survival, the fact that she had saved him. She pressed her hands against her eyes to block out the memory, but it lingered like a shadow in her soul. That night, as the forest settled into an uneasy quiet, a sense of foreboding crept over Lyra. She could feel the king's gaze, even from afar, like a silent predator watching her every move. She was not safe. He would find her. That knowledge brought a cold shiver down her spine. Raverin, too, could not rest. His dreams were filled with fire and shadow, with the girl's face emerging from the smoke. He saw her eyes, bright, defiant, unbroken, and he saw himself helpless, alive only because she chose mercy over vengeance. The thought gnawed at him. How could a king, feared across lands, feel indebted to a mere girl? And yet he did. By dawn, the forest lay in uneasy silence. Ash fell like snow, covering the remnants of the pack's home. The birds were silent. The wind whispered through the scorched trees, carrying a message of sorrow and warning. Lyra rose, determined to move. She had survived the night, but she could not remain here. She had to keep going, to find a way to survive, to hide, and to prepare. And somewhere in her heart, buried beneath grief and anger, there was a flicker of curiosity. About him. About the Alpha King who could not kill her, even when everything told him to. Raverin, on the other side of the forest, made a choice. He would find her, not as a conqueror seeking revenge, but as a man compelled by a force he did not understand. He did not know what he would do when he found her, only that he could not ignore the pull she had on him. The forest held its breath. Ashes drifted lazily through the morning light. The fire was dying, but the consequences of that night were only beginning. And somewhere, hidden in the shadows, Lyra paused, sensing it. The presence of the man she had saved, moving through the forest like a dark storm approaching. Her heart raced. She could not run forever. She knew the Alpha King would come for her. Cliffhanger. Lyra's gaze snapped to the shadows between the trees. A figure emerged, tall and imposing, yet strangely familiar. Her breath caught in her throat. The Alpha King had found her, and this time, she could not escape. The forest was quiet now, though not peaceful. Broken branches and scorched earth marked the path of the battle that had passed. Lyra moved cautiously, every step measured, her eyes scanning the shadows. She could feel it, the heavy presence of the Alpha King. Her heart raced, not from fear alone, but from the strange, confusing pull he had left on her the night he survived her mercy. Raverin moved silently through the trees, cloaked in shadow. His soldiers had returned to the edge of the forest to regroup, leaving him alone. He did not need them now. His thoughts were consumed by the girl who had spared him, the one who should have been his enemy. He remembered the fire in her eyes, the calm strength in her hands, and the way she had refused to let hatred consume her entirely. He had never experienced such confusion. Kings were not supposed to feel gratitude toward those they conquered. Kings were not supposed to be drawn toward someone who had defied them, or worse, someone they should despise. But he was drawn. Against all reason, he wanted to see her again, to understand her, perhaps even to repay the debt she had unwittingly forced upon him. Lyra paused near a small stream. Water sparkled in the early morning light, offering a rare moment of calm. She knelt and cupped her hands, drinking quickly. The cold water soothed her parched throat, but it could not wash away the memories of the night before, the screams, the fire, the broken bodies of her pack. She had survived, but at what cost? The forest no longer felt like home. Every sound made her flinch. Every shadow could be Raverin. She hated that thought, and yet she could not deny its truth. He would find her, and when he did, she did not know if she could resist him or if she even wanted to. Suddenly, a rustle of leaves made her freeze. Her spear was in her hands in an instant, tip pointed toward the sound. She moved silently, following the noise, every nerve alert. Out of the shadows, a figure emerged. Not a wolf, not a soldier, but the Alpha King himself. Tall, imposing, and impossibly commanding, his dark eyes locked on hers. Lyra's heart raced. She tightened her grip on her spear, but she did not attack. Instead, she held her ground, waiting for his move. Raverin stopped a few feet away. He did not raise his weapon. Instead, he regarded her quietly, studying her as one might study a puzzle too complex to solve. "You survived," he said, his voice low but steady. "I thought." "No one could survive what happened last night." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "I did, but that does not mean I will let you see me as anything other than your enemy." Her voice was firm, but her hands shook slightly. Ravrin inclined his head, almost as if he respected her courage. "Perhaps," he said, "but you saved my life." The words hung between them, heavier than any sword or shield. "And for that I owe you a debt." Lyra's grip on her spear tightened. She hated him. She hated the debt she now owed to the very man who had destroyed everything she loved. And yet she could not bring herself to leave. Part of her wanted to understand him, to see why he was not like the monsters she had imagined. Before she could respond, a sudden noise erupted nearby. A group of supernatural hunters, drawn by the fire and chaos of the previous night, moved quickly through the trees. Their weapons gleamed with strange energy, and they attacked without warning. Lyra and Ravrin had no choice but to fight together. Their movements were fluid, almost instinctive. Lyra's spear found its mark again and again, while Ravrin's sword struck with precision and power. They covered each other, moving as if they had been trained to fight side by side, though they had just met in earnest. In the heat of the battle, something shifted. For the first time, Lyra saw Ravrin not as a king, but as a man who fought with all he had to survive. He was not invincible. He was human. And perhaps, just perhaps, he could understand what it meant to lose everything. When the last hunter fell, both of them stood panting, sweat and ash on their faces. Lyra looked at him, and for a brief moment the weight of her hatred wavered. She could not forgive him, not yet, but she could recognize his strength and the strange vulnerability he carried. "You shouldn't have saved me," Ravrin said, breaking the silence. His voice was quieter now, almost uncertain. "You could have left me there and it would have been justified." Lyra shook her head, gripping her spear. "I did what I had to do," she said. "Even if it was you, I could not let you die." Her voice trembled, though she tried to hide it. Ravrin studied her for a long moment. His eyes softened, though he did not let her see fully. "You are unlike anyone I have ever met," he said finally. "And I cannot decide if that frightens me or draws me closer." Lyra stiffened, her mind racing. Drawn to him? She hated the very thought, and yet she could not deny the pull she felt. The strange connection that had begun the night she saved his life. She wanted to run, to disappear forever, but the forest around them offered no real escape, and deep down she knew that he would find her again. Ravrin finally spoke again, his tone commanding but measured. "You cannot hide forever. I will find you."
"And when I do—"
He left the sentence unfinished, but the meaning was clear. Lyra swallowed hard. She knew she could not outrun him, and yet she would try. She turned and disappeared into the forest, her movements swift and silent, leaving Ravrin behind. He watched her go, a strange feeling twisting in his chest, something like longing, something like regret, something he had never felt before. The forest seemed to close around him, silent except for the distant crackle of dying fire. For a moment he felt the weight of everything he had done, the lives lost, the homes destroyed, the power he had wielded without question, and now, a single girl had forced him to question everything. Lyra ran until the sun was high in the sky, her breath ragged, her body exhausted. She found a small clearing near a waterfall, hidden and peaceful. She sank to the ground, leaning against a rock, and let herself breathe. The water from the falls misted over her, cooling her skin, and for the first time since the battle she felt a small measure of safety. Yet safety was fleeting. She knew he would not forget her. He would track her, search for her, and in the end she would have to face him again. The thought filled her with dread, and something else she did not understand. Ravrin, on the other side of the forest, did not rest either. He rode slowly, alone, through the burned remains of the pack's territory. His mind replayed the night over and over. He could not stop thinking about her, the girl who had defied him, saved him, and vanished before he could even speak to her. She was more than a survivor. She was a challenge, and he could not resist challenges. By nightfall, both were far from the ruins, yet neither was truly safe. The forest was full of dangers, hunters, remnants of the supernatural forces that had stirred the previous night, and perhaps something darker still, waiting in the shadows. And now there was another tension, more dangerous than any weapon. the tension between them. Lyra wrapped herself in a cloak, hiding in the shadow of the waterfall. She thought about what had happened, about the strange bond that had begun between her and the Alpha King. She hated that bond. She feared it, and yet she could not deny it. It lingered in her chest like a faint flame, threatening to burn brighter with every memory of him. Ravrin, meanwhile, looked out from a ridge, his eyes scanning the forest. He did not know why he was so drawn to her. Perhaps it was because she reminded him of a world he had never known, a world without cruelty, without conquest, without bloodshed. Or perhaps it was because she had seen him, really seen him, and had not turned away. The night grew colder and the forest darker. Lyra lay down, using the waterfall's mist to hide herself, but sleep would not come. Her mind raced with thoughts of the Alpha King. Why had he not tried to kill her? Why had he allowed her mercy to stand? And why, despite everything, did she feel an unexplainable connection to him? Ravrin, in his camp far away, stared at the stars above, thinking of her as well. He wondered if she could sense him, if she could hear the silent vow forming in his heart. He would find her. And when he did, he would understand this bond, whether it led to war, reconciliation, or something neither of them could yet name. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the inevitable meeting. Somewhere deep in the shadows, destiny stirred, and the threads of fate began to weave a story of survival, trust, and a connection neither Lyra nor Ravrin fully understood. Cliffhanger. Lyra blinked into the darkness and froze. Among the shadows near the waterfall, she saw a figure watching her, not with hate, not with anger, but with an intensity she could not ignore. The Alpha King had found her again, and this time, she could not hide. The forest was dense, dark, and alive with whispers. Lyra moved cautiously, her senses alert to every sound. Her heart still pounded from the encounter with Ravrin the previous night. She had barely escaped his presence, but she knew it was only a matter of time before he would find her again. And now she could not deny the strange pull she felt toward him. A mixture of fear, curiosity, and something deeper she did not yet understand. Ravrin, meanwhile, had returned to his camp but could not rest. His mind was consumed by the girl who had saved his life, not once, but twice. He remembered her eyes, bright with defiance, unbroken even after all the horrors he had brought upon her. He did not understand why she affected him so, but he could not ignore it. The Alpha King, feared across kingdoms, found himself chasing a girl through a forest, not to conquer her, but to understand her. The next day, fate intervened in a way neither of them could ignore. Lyra, searching for food and water, stumbled into a hidden clearing. Sunlight broke through the trees, illuminating an ancient stone circle. Symbols carved long ago glimmered faintly in the morning light. The air felt charged, heavy with power. She recognized the markings. They were old, magical, and tied to the curse that had plagued Ravrin's family for generations. She knelt by the stones, tracing the carvings with her fingers. She could feel the energy pulsing beneath her touch, a reminder that the forest, her pack, and even the Alpha King's life were part of something larger. Her thoughts drifted unwillingly to Ravrin. Could he be affected by this same power? Had her pack always been tied to the curse, their lives intertwined with his destiny? Suddenly, movement in the shadows made her spin around. Ravrin stepped into the clearing, his dark eyes fixed on her. He did not look angry. He did not look commanding. He looked curious, human, vulnerable in a way that made Lyra's chest tighten. "You found it," he said softly, nodding toward the stone circle. "I see you understand more than I expected." Lyra stood, gripping her spear, but not raising it. "I know enough," she replied. "Enough to know that the curse your family carries is dangerous, and enough to know it touches more than just you." Her voice was steady, though her heart raced. Ravrin studied her. "Yes," he admitted. "It affects everything, my kingdom, my army, even those I cannot touch. I have fought it for years, yet I cannot escape it, and now, I think it is reaching you." Lyra's eyes widened. She had suspected a connection, but hearing it confirmed by the Alpha King himself made her blood run cold. "Then what do we do?" she asked quietly. Ravrin took a step closer. His presence was overwhelming, his dark armor glinting even in the filtered sunlight. "We survive," he said simply. "Together, if you are willing. The forest is full of dangers. Supernatural hunters, remnants of my enemies, and the curse itself. Alone you will not last. But with me." His voice trailed off, heavy with meaning. Lyra's hands shook slightly. She wanted to refuse, to push him away, but she knew he was right. Survival meant cooperation. And more than that, she could not ignore the bond that had begun to form between them, fragile but undeniable. "Fine," she said finally. "We work together. But understand this, I do not trust you, not yet, and I will not forget what you did to my pack." Raverin inclined his head. "I would not expect you to," he said, "and I do not ask for forgiveness. Only understanding, and perhaps in time trust." They set out together, moving cautiously through the forest. Lyra led, knowing the terrain better, but Raverin matched her step for step, protective yet respectful of her space. They shared silence more often than words, each lost in their own thoughts. As the day passed, they encountered the remnants of the supernatural hunters. Raverin fought with precision and strength, while Lyra moved with speed and cunning. They complemented each other, a strange balance forming between them. For the first time, Lyra realized that he was not invincible. He could bleed, he could falter, and he could learn. And for the first time, Raverin realized that she was more than a survivor. She was a force to be reckoned with, fierce and unyielding. By dusk, they arrived at a hidden glade, a small clearing protected by towering trees. The air was cool, scented with moss and wildflowers. Lyra set up a small camp, keeping watch even as she allowed herself a brief moment to rest. Raverin sat opposite her, his sword resting across his lap, eyes scanning the shadows. "Why do you hesitate?" he asked quietly, breaking the silence. Lyra looked at him, surprised. "Hesitate? To fight me, to trust me, to even consider anything more than hate," he said. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "I see it in your eyes. You are conflicted." Lyra swallowed hard. "I am conflicted," she admitted. "You destroyed my pack. You took everything from me, and yet you spared my life, and now you stand beside me. I cannot understand it. I do not want to." Raverin's eyes softened, though his expression remained serious. "I did not spare you out of mercy," he said. "I spared you because something in you, something in your spirit, called to me. I do not know why, but I do know this. You saved me, and in doing so, you changed me. I cannot ignore that." Lyra felt her chest tighten. She wanted to reject him, to run from the pull that threatened to draw her in. And yet she could not. She had saved his life, and now, strangely, he had saved hers. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to believe that she might survive this night, and perhaps the curse that shadowed them both. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the trees, Lyra awoke to find Raverin gone. Panic surged in her chest. Had he left? Had he abandoned her? Before she could react, he returned, carrying a bundle of supplies and a small satchel of herbs. He knelt beside her. "I do not leave," he said quietly. "Even if the curse or the hunters or fate itself tries to pull us apart, I remain. I will not abandon you." Lyra looked at him, her mind spinning. His words were sincere, but she could not fully trust them yet. She wanted to, desperately, but the memories of her pack of fire and blood haunted her still. "You speak of trust," she said slowly. "But trust is earned, and we have a long way to go." Raverin nodded. "I know," he said. "And I am willing to walk that path, step by step, day by day." As they continued through the forest, they shared stories, fragments of their pasts, pieces of their lives. Lyra spoke of her pack, their traditions, and the love she had felt for her family. Raverin spoke of his kingdom, the weight of his crown, and the curse that had shaped him into the man he had become. Each story revealed vulnerability, and each moment drew them closer, though neither fully admitted it. By evening, they reached the edge of a ravine, the forest falling away to reveal a vast, mist-covered valley. The air was thick with magic, ancient and powerful. Raverin's hand brushed against Lyra's as they prepared to descend. Neither pulled away. "Whatever happens next," Raverin said quietly, "we face it together, you and I, against the curse, against the hunters, against anything that comes." Lyra met his gaze, seeing not just the Alpha King, but the man beneath the armor, the man who had been changed by her mercy, and who might yet be redeemed by her trust. But even as they stepped forward into the unknown, the forest whispered warnings. Shadows moved in ways they should not, and the air grew heavier with unseen power. The curse was not gone. It was waiting, growing stronger, entwined with their destinies. Cliffhanger. As they descended into the misty valley, a deep rumble shook the earth. From the fog, a pair of glowing eyes appeared, watching them silently. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. Reverend tensed. They were not alone, and whatever was coming would test everything. Trust, strength, and the fragile bond forming between them. The mist in the valley was thick, curling around trees and rocks like living fingers. Lyra moved cautiously, spear in hand, as Ravrin followed closely behind. Every step felt uncertain, the ground beneath them slick and uneven. The valley seemed alive, whispering secrets in a language neither of them fully understood. "I don't like this place," Lyra whispered, her voice tense. "It feels wrong." Ravrin glanced at her. "It is old magic," he said. "Powerful, dangerous, and connected to the curse my family carries. We must be careful. One wrong step could alert forces that have been waiting for centuries." Lyra nodded, her senses sharp. She had survived fire, blood, and the Alpha King's army, but something about this valley felt different. The danger here was not physical alone. It was a darkness that seeped into the mind, into the soul. As they moved deeper into the mist, the faint glow of eyes appeared among the shadows. Lyra froze. Ravrin tensed beside her, sword raised. "Hunters," he muttered, his voice low. "Or worse." Figures emerged from the fog, tall, cloaked beings moving silently, their eyes glowing like embers. They did not speak, but the air around them hummed with power. Lyra gripped her spear, ready to strike, but Ravrin placed a hand on her shoulder. "Wait," he said. "We must understand them first. Fighting blindly will only make us weaker." The figures paused, then slowly bowed, as if acknowledging Ravrin. Their leader stepped forward, removing the hood to reveal a face marked with age and wisdom. "Alpha King," the figure said, voice echoing with authority. "You tread paths you do not yet understand. This valley is bound to your family's curse. It tests those who enter." Ravrin's eyes narrowed. "And if I fail?" he asked. "You will be consumed," the elder replied. "And those you care for may fall with you." Lyra's chest tightened. The curse had been a shadow over Ravrin's life, but she had not realized the full weight it carried. Now she understood. The danger was not just for him or for her. It was for everything they both held dear. As the mist swirled, Ravrin turned to Lyra. "We must face it together," he said firmly. "I cannot do this alone, and neither can you." Lyra swallowed hard. She had already chosen survival, had already accepted that she must rely on him. But now the stakes were higher. They would need trust, and trust was fragile between them. "Then we face it," she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her heart. They pressed forward, the valley growing darker with each step. Strange creatures watched from the shadows, some slinking silently between the trees, others perched high above like sentinels. The very ground seemed to pulse with energy, as if the earth itself was alive and aware of their presence. Hours passed. They found a small stone altar, worn by time, covered in strange markings. The air around it shimmered with magic. Ravrin approached cautiously, placing a hand on the cold stone. "This is it," he murmured. "The source. The heart of the curse." Lyra stepped beside him, her fingers brushing the stone. A shock ran through her body, a pulse of energy, strong and demanding. She stumbled back slightly. Ravrin steadied her. "You feel it too," he said. "Yes," she whispered. "It's alive." And angry. The elder figures appeared again, surrounding them. "To break the curse," one said, "you must confront your own darkness, Alpha King. And you must face her fear, girl. Only together can you survive." Lyra looked at Ravrin, seeing not the Alpha King, not the conqueror, but the man beneath the armor. He was vulnerable, afraid, and determined all at once. Her own fear mirrored his. She had been running from him, running from her feelings and running from the grief of losing her pack. But here, in this valley of shadows and power, running was no longer an option. Suddenly the mist thickened and the ground trembled beneath them. Shadows stretched and twisted, forming monstrous shapes. They moved to attack, and Ravrin and Lyra stood back to back, defending each other. Sword met claw, spear met shadow, as they fought with a synchronicity neither had experienced before. Through the chaos, Lyra realized something vital. The curse was feeding off their fear, their anger, their hatred. Every moment they allowed those feelings to take hold made the shadows stronger. She met Ravrin's eyes and understood. If they hoped to survive, they had to trust each other completely. "Stop fighting me," Ravrin shouted over the roar of the shadows. "Trust me." Lyra hesitated. Fear and anger surged inside her, but she took a deep breath and let them go. She trusted him. She had no other choice. Together, they pushed forward, moving not out of hatred or fear, but with determination and mutual reliance. The shadows recoiled, writhing and screaming as their power diminished. Lyra's spear struck true, and Ravern's sword cut clean through the darkness. The ground shook violently, then fell silent. The mist cleared slightly and the altar glowed brighter, signaling the weakening of the curse. But relief was brief. A voice echoed from the shadows, low and menacing. "You may have won this battle, but the war is not over." Lyra's heart raced. What is that?" she demanded. Ravern's eyes darkened. "The curse has a will of its own," he said. "It tests, it taunts, and it waits. It is not finished with us." He turned to her, voice gentle but firm. "Lyra, whatever happens, whatever comes next, we must remain together. Only then can we have any chance of survival, and any chance of hope." Lyra nodded, her hands trembling slightly. She could not deny the bond forming between them, the understanding that they were stronger together than apart. The forest was still dangerous. The shadows still lurked, but for the first time she felt a measure of courage. The elder figures approached once more. "You have shown strength," one said, "but the throne you walk toward is fractured. Betrayal awaits. Only by facing it will the curse be fully tested, and perhaps broken." Lyra looked at Ravern. "Betrayal?" she asked. Ravern's jaw tightened. "Even those closest to me may turn against me," he said quietly. "My kingdom is not united. My army may see you as a threat. You who have survived and defied me, you are powerful, and that power frightens them. They will test us. We must be ready." Lyra swallowed, realizing that their journey would not only be through the valley but through treachery, suspicion, and the trials of their own hearts. And through it all they would have to rely on each other. Night fell and the valley grew colder. Lyra and Ravern set camp near the altar, keeping watch. Neither spoke much, each lost in thought. The bond between them had grown stronger, yet the fear of betrayal, of loss, and of the curse lingered. As Lyra drifted into a light, uneasy sleep, she dreamt of fire and shadow, of her pack, and of Ravern's eyes, dark, intense, and full of unspoken emotion. She woke with a start, sensing movement in the shadows. Ravern was already on his feet, sword in hand. "They are here," he whispered. "The army? My generals have arrived." Lyra's heart sank. "Here? Now?" He nodded. "And they do not know what I have found? They see you as a threat. They may not believe the bond we share. They may try to take you from me." Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. The danger they faced was no longer the supernatural alone. It was human, political, and personal. She looked at Ravern, seeing determination mixed with worry. The Alpha King for the first time seemed vulnerable to more than just the curse. Cliffhanger. From the mist, torches appeared, flickering like fireflies in the dark. Figures emerged, soldiers of Ravern's own army, eyes cold and distrustful. Lyra gripped her spear and Ravern raised his sword. They were surrounded, and the fractured throne had begun its test. Survival now depended not only on strength and trust, but on the bond between the girl who had saved the king and the king who could not forget her. The torches flickered in the misty valley, casting long, trembling shadows across the stone altar and the surrounding trees. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest as she held her spear tightly. The soldiers of Ravern's army stepped forward, their faces cold, distrustful and questioning. Ravern stood in front of her, his dark armor glinting in the firelight. The Alpha King's presence was imposing, but tonight it carried more than authority. It carried determination, a willingness to face both the curse and those who doubted him. His eyes met Lyra's, and in that moment, unspoken words passed between them. Trust, understanding, and an unbreakable bond forged through danger and survival. "Why are you here?" one of the generals demanded, stepping forward. His hand rested on his sword, but his eyes betrayed suspicion. "This girl, she is no ally. She has no place in this valley." Ravern's gaze was sharp, unwavering. "She saved my life," he said, voice strong and commanding. "Without her, I would not be here tonight. She is no enemy, she is my ally, and I will not let anyone question that." The generals exchanged uneasy glances. Many had fought under Ravern's command for years, yet none had seen him vulnerable. None had witnessed the bond forming between him and the girl he had once considered an enemy. The valley seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see if loyalty would falter. Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear twisting in her chest. "I do not fight for power. I fight to survive and to ensure that the curse does not claim more lives. I have nothing to gain from this except to stop the darkness. Her words seemed to hang in the air. Some soldiers lowered their weapons slightly, sensing her sincerity. Others remained skeptical, unwilling to challenge the command of the Alpha King openly, yet not fully trusting the girl who had survived what none of them could. Raverin approached the altar, placing his hand over the carved symbols. "The curse is old," he said quietly, though the sound carried across the valley. "It tests us. It challenges us. But it does not have power over trust, courage, or unity. Together we can end it." The elder figures emerged from the shadows once more, their presence silent but commanding. "The final trial begins," one said. "Those who seek power must confront the darkness within. Only through courage and unity can the curse be broken." Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. She had faced hunters, shadows, and fear itself. But now the trial was more than survival. It was a test of hearts, loyalty, and the bond she shared with Raverin. The ground trembled, and shadows rose from the mist, forming monstrous shapes more terrifying than any they had faced before. Lyra and Raverin stood side by side, weapons ready. She met his gaze. "Whatever happens," she said softly, "we face it together." Raverin nodded, a rare softness in his eyes. "Together," he confirmed. The shadows surged forward, twisting and writhing. Lyra struck first, spear flashing in the dim light, while Raverin's sword cut through the darkness with precision. They moved as one, each anticipating the other's actions, covering weaknesses and striking where strength was needed. As the battle raged, the curse itself seemed to speak through the shadows, testing not only their skill but their trust in each other. Lyra felt doubt creep into her mind, fear whispering that the Alpha King's past would undo them both. But every time that thought arose, Raverin's presence steadied her. She realized then that the bond they shared was stronger than fear, stronger than hate, stronger than the curse itself. Finally, they reached the heart of the shadows, where the mist was thickest, and the air pulsed with dark energy. Raverin placed his hand on Lyra's shoulder. "Now," he said. Together, Lyra nodded. They raised their weapons simultaneously, and in a single, unified motion they struck at the core of the curse. A blinding light erupted, shaking the valley and sending shadows screaming back into the void. The ground quaked violently, and for a moment it seemed as if the world itself might shatter. Then silence. The mist lifted. The shadows were gone. The valley was calm. Lyra and Raverin stood side by side, breathing heavily, covered in ash and sweat, but alive. They had faced the curse and survived, not through power alone, but through trust, courage, and unity. The elder figures bowed deeply. "It is done," one said. "The curse is broken. The valley is free, and the bond you share will echo through generations." Lyra looked at Raverin, her chest tight with emotion. We did it," she whispered. Raverin nodded, though he did not speak. Instead, he extended a hand to her. Lyra took it, feeling the warmth of his grip and the strength it conveyed. They did not need words. Their hearts had spoken in silence long before. The soldiers of Raverin's army approached, eyes wide with awe and newfound respect. Some bowed to Lyra, others to Raverin, and some simply stood in stunned silence. The fear and suspicion that had lingered were gone, replaced by understanding that the bond between the Alpha King and the girl who had saved him had changed everything. As night fell over the valley, a sense of peace settled. The curse had been broken, the shadows banished, and the bond between Lyra and Raverin solidified through trials that neither could have faced alone. Raverin turned to Lyra, his voice quiet but filled with emotion. "You could have walked away," he said. "You had every reason to hate me, to run, to never look back. And yet, you stayed. You fought. You trusted me. And for that, I cannot thank you enough." Lyra shook her head, a small smile forming on her lips. "You don't need to thank me," she said softly. "We survived. That is enough, and perhaps we have found something more. Something neither of us expected." Raverin's eyes softened, and he took her hand in both of his. "Yes," he said quietly. "Something neither of us expected, but something I will never let go." The valley, once filled with mist and darkness, now felt alive with possibility. The forest whispered in the wind, carrying the story of survival, courage, and the bond between the Alpha King and the girl who had saved him. In the days that followed, Raverin returned to his kingdom with Lyra at his side. The soldiers and generals who had doubted her now recognized her strength, courage, and wisdom. Together, they rebuilt what had been broken, not just in the kingdom but within themselves. Lyra learned the ways of the court, not as a queen or a ruler, but as a trusted partner and ally. Raverin, once a man defined by conquest and power, learned humility, patience, and the depth of connection that could exist between two hearts tested by darkness. The bond between them grew stronger each day. Not through words alone, but through shared trials, shared victories, and the understanding that survival was not enough without someone to fight for, someone to trust, someone to love. Months passed, and the kingdom flourished. The shadow of the curse was gone, and the bond between Lyra and Raverin became a symbol of hope and unity. The people who had once feared the Alpha King now saw him in a new light, not just as a ruler, but as a man capable of love, respect, and courage beyond the battlefield. One evening, as the sun set over the horizon, casting golden light across the kingdom, Lyra and Raverin stood together on a balcony overlooking the valley they had saved. "You have changed me," Raverin said quietly, his hand brushing against hers, "not through power but through trust. Through your courage. Through your heart," Lyra smiled softly. "And you have changed me," she replied. "You taught me that even in darkness there can be light. Even in loss there can be hope. And even in enemies, there can be love." Raverin pulled her close, and for the first time in a long while, they allowed themselves to simply exist together. No battles, no curses, no shadows, just two hearts bound by experience, trust, and something more profound than either could have imagined. The wind whispered through the valley, carrying the story of the girl who had saved the Alpha King, and the king who had found redemption through her. Their journey had been perilous, their trial severe, but in the end, they had emerged stronger, united, and ready to face whatever the future might hold, together. And as the stars began to shine above the kingdom, Lyra knew that this was only the beginning, a beginning of trust, of love, and of a bond that would endure long after curses and shadows had faded. The Alpha King and the girl who had saved him stood side by side, ready to lead, to protect, and to live not as ruler and subject but as partners, equals, and two souls forever changed by the trials they had faced.